All right, we'll give everyone a moment there. And still just letting a few more people in. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Sam Fletcher. I'm the Executive Director of NASW New York State, and I am so happy that we are doing this panel. We have done this panel before and it was extremely powerful. So I'm just going to start with a little bit of house cleaning and then we'll get to our veterans as quickly as possible because I know that's why everyone is here tonight. Okay, so just so everyone knows, I'm pretty sure you all are familiar with Zoom now since we've been doing this for almost 3 years. But just in case you're not, we have enabled the words at the bottom, sorry, the closed captioning, it escaped me there for a minute. So you can, if you need closed captioning, you can access that at the bottom. On mine computer, it says, it has a little button that says closed captioning that allows me to turn it on or off. You can also change the way that you see different people by clicking on, for me, it's at the top right-hand side where it says view. So you can choose to view just the speaker or you can view the whole panel. So those are just a few Zoom things. You can definitely interact throughout the chat all night. We love it when you do that. You know, definitely send love to our panelists as they're talking. You know, throw whatever information you want in there. We always like to know where you're joining us from. So you can go ahead and put that in the chat and let us know where that is. That just gives everyone a little bit of context. Also, if you've ever served or you're a family member of someone who served, you could put that in the chat for us. It just lets the panel know who they're talking to tonight. And I did want to say that this panel does not have any CE credits. Most of the things we do with our veterans does have CE, but this one doesn't. We do have a free CE program coming up on October 20th at 6 o'clock, and we will start advertising that shortly. So you'll see that start coming up in the next few weeks, and that will be a free CE for everyone. But this one does not have CE credit. And I just want to give a little overview of the Veterans Mental Health Training Initiative. That is the funding that we receive from the New York State Legislature that allows us to do panels like this and to offer the free CEs. The New York State chapter of NASW was granted this funding for the first time somewhere around 2011. And we've had the funding ever since then with the goal of training mental health professionals to work with service members, veterans, and their families. We think that it's incredibly important that people are culturally humble and start to build cultural competence in working with this population. And when I came into the chapter in September of 2019, one of the first things I did was reach out to the veterans that I had worked with in the past, and we built a Veterans Advisory Committee. I feel that it is extremely important that any project we do that's about a group of people be led by that group of people because they are the ones with the lived experience and they know what people need to know. And so who you will be hearing from tonight are members of our Veteran Advisory Committee. They have done absolutely phenomenal work starting 3 years ago. So we're heading into now starting into our 4th year of doing this. If you've been to any of our trainings, you know how phenomenal this group of people are. So tonight, of course, we'll be talking about 9/11. And I am going to go ahead and get us started with our first question to the panel. So I'm just going to ask each panelist when you start, if you'll introduce yourself to the audience, and then just talk about what 9/11 means to you, like what you think about on 9/11, your experience of 9/11, whatever feels natural to you. And we are going to start tonight with Venetia.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening to Sam and my fellow veteran panelists and everyone who's listening. Thank you for taking time out of your day to tune in and listen to us. So my name is Venetia DeRoos. I'm a mother, a wife, a U.S. Navy woman veteran, and I am a social worker. And I stress I stress woman veteran due to the fact many women veterans do not identify as women veterans. And as clinicians and as mental health professionals, you may see women veterans who don't acknowledge their service. But I'm happy to say that I am one of those women veterans who's very proud of her service, and I identify as a woman veteran who has served. Whether you have a private practice or if you're employed by an agency, there's a high possibility that you may encounter women veterans who may feel the way that I do or not. On Tuesday, 11 September 2001, I lived in Brooklyn at the time, and I was in college. And that morning, I remember being vigorously shaken by my cousin, and she said, you know, one of the Twin Towers is on fire. It was hit by an airplane. So I jumped out of bed and I ran into the living room because this time, you know, it was aired on TV. And as I'm standing there, the second tower was hit. You know, my mind immediately went to my cousin because my cousin worked at the Trade Center at the time. We tried calling him and he wouldn't respond because the phone services were down. So we had no idea, you know, what had happened to him. Then within an hour of the attack, we didn't know that at the time, we hear footsteps running up the stairs, and it was my cousin. He ran all the way from Brooklyn, from Manhattan, and he was covered with ashes and debris from the World Trade Center. There was no trains running at the time either. So, you know, he was safe for the most part, at least physically. And it's something I'll never forget. And I had chills like I did way back when. Now, as I'm talking about it, it's just a memory that, you know, really never goes away. So we lived on the 4th floor of the building, so we're able to get access to the roof. So we would go on the roof. We went on the roof, and we were able to see the fire and the buildings. You know, the smoke entering the sky. And you know, that was a moment for us. I think for me, that was the moment that I realized that I thought, you know, at this information I came out that we were attacked by terrorists. And I stood there, I'm like, you know, how is it that our enemies would attack us on our own soil? I felt very, in that moment, I felt very angry. I felt angry. And I think that was a moment that I really wanted to join the military. I didn't join right away because I was still in college. But I did join in 2006. And I think that was one of the best decisions that I have ever made. I didn't really know which branch I wanted to join, but eventually I joined the Navy. I was deployed multiple times. It was mentally draining. It was physically draining. It was emotionally draining serving. But I wouldn't change it for the world. And although it was all of those things, I still view myself as a Navy veteran, a woman Navy veteran who proudly served. And I identify as such. The World Trade Center, Twin Towers, it really resonated with me. I was not born in the US, however, but I felt that connection, and I felt that it's not okay for this to happen, and I want to be part of it. So I did it, and I served, and I'm proud of that.
Thank you so much, Benicia. I always learn something new about you every time I hear your story. And now I'm going to hand it over to my good friend Brett and ask him to introduce himself and talk about what 9/11 means to him.
Hello, everybody. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Brent Russell, and I am an Army veteran. I served during 1990 to 91. So when 9/11 happened, I was actually sleeping, and I woke up and I saw on the TV, the tower smoking, and I thought to myself, wow, this looks like a pretty interesting movie, and then I ended up going back to sleep. And then when I woke up and I saw the same still picture there with the building, the tower still smoking, I was like, okay, wait a minute, what's going on? And I was just, some of the feelings that I went to was definitely fear, because we have been touched, then there was anger. I had some hurt, and there was some confusion, and and definitely once again anger, and I take my hat off to the individuals who were at Ground Zero. I was not, actually in Suffolk County, and those who lost family and personal friends, I take my hat off, and my condolences, that moment of silence, I join in with that every year. And one of the ways that I have been able to give back, right? I could not join I couldn't join the military again, right? Because I was out on an honorable medical leave. So that was something that I would have loved to do. So one of the ways that I've been able to give back, right, and do my part to help is, because I am a social worker, is to do some clinical work with individuals who have suffered from this, right? And I've been able to do that with, a few individuals who were there. One individual specifically was a fireman, and he actually, well, I'm not going to break his anonymity, but he was a fireman, and he every year at around September 11th, he would relapse and start drinking, and so and he, some of the things that he told me made me respect so much more what happened. I also want to share with you that somewhere down the line after this thing happened, right? And I look at it in a way where I say, yo, this was really something that was really terrible. And it really, really was. But when I look at some of the other things and I try to find something positive out of this and good things, New York came together, to help each other. There were people who were not first responders who became first responders. There were people who exhibited courage and courageousness. And, there were first responders who gave of themselves and who literally gave themselves. And, I think that is monumental, and that's something that I personally respect and love about our city and love about the heart of a first responder. I went to the 9/11 memorial in the city with a organization called Military Resilience Project under the capable leadership of Anissa Leonardo. And I went with her, and a group of us went, and we sat before we went, and they told us a little bit about what we were getting ready to experience, but I still wasn't prepared, and so within it, there's a museum, and within the museum, as you walk through, you get to see the like news, and it's kind of and it's live, right? And I couldn't make it through. I had to go back a second time to finish this this event, because it was just really emotional for me. And I've gotten more emotional in my older age. Let me just say that. And but that day really affected me, and I really understood what the damage it was, and we're still cleaning up today. Freedom Tower is up, but we're still cleaning up from the damage and the wreckage that reside in New Yorkers and people around the world. And so I'm grateful to be a part of that, use my degree in a positive way, and I look for it. I really do. I look for it. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you so much, Brent. And now we're going to move on to one of our committee members extraordinaire, Alyssa.
Hello, so I'm Alyssa Gibbons, social worker, U.S. Navy veteran, along with my sister in service, Sarah Venecia. I served as a social work officer for a little over 6 years, and I've been a part of this committee since Sam came in and just rejuvenated everything. I just want to apologize for my screen going black periodically. I'm outside with my cat. It's a very long story, but if my screen goes black, it's just simply out of respect, so I'm not moving around and being distracting from my colleagues sharing. So I just wanted to let that piece out there. But 9/11 for me, I think everybody on this panel and many of you watching can remember exactly where you were that morning. I had just started graduate school for social work, was working a career fair as a graduate assistant, and we were setting up in our civic center type thing. I was in North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina, UNC Chapel Hill, or UNC Charlotte, sorry, not Chapel Hill. And I can remember just all the hubbub of just a normal Tuesday morning. And there was TVs over in like the break room area where the vendors and distributors and whatever could go. And I remember somebody saying, "Oh my goodness, one of the towers was just hit." And at that point in time, we thought it was just this horrible, horrible accident, like that something had just gone awry with landing. And within a very few minutes, then it was, oh my God, the second tower was hit. And I think in that moment, coming from a military family, like I knew what that meant. Like I'm like, okay, this is not an accident. This is something more. And I watched the military recruiters who were at the career fair get a phone call, pack up their booth, and we're out of there in 10 minutes flat because they knew what was fixing to happen. I mean, I knew what was fixing to happen. And just the rest of the day just was this pall of whatever. And then as the reports of Pennsylvania came in and DC came in, and it just was this, oh my God, what is this? Just I remember feeling in the pit of my stomach like they attacked my state, and I wasn't from the city, so I didn't have a intense connection to New York City other than it's my country. I mean, this is just this. And I was supposed to fly to Rhode Island the weekend after that, maybe even that same weekend, I don't remember now, for a girlfriend's wedding. And I remember being like, I can't get on a plane. I can't, it's just things I can't do. And my father at the time was traveling for business. And I remember also in the same civic center, there was a bank of payphones. And I think there's a lot of folks in a day and age who probably will never know what a bank of payphones looks like because they don't exist anymore in a civic center. And it's not that horribly long ago, but it is all at the same time. And everybody was like at the bank of payphones trying desperately to get in touch with somebody. Because cell phones, yes, they were around and whatever, but it wasn't like it is today. And I remember finally being able to get through to my mother, who was here in New York. I was still obviously in North Carolina. And I just simply said, it's me. And she said, he's on the ground, he's safe, he was not flying today. And that's all I needed to know. And I was good. I said, okay, I'm good, I'm safe, I'll call you later. And that was it. Like, I needed to know that my people were safe. And then the stories would just pour in about near misses and missing the bus or missing the train, or I mean, all the things from friends. And then of course the stories of, no, they were there, they were in the towers and we're not sure, but we think. I can remember being just so incredibly moved and feeling like my service, I'd always been driven to serve and help and do something. That's just who I am. And just feeling that being shaped even more. I remember thinking, and I was looking at joining the military. I was thinking about joining the Air Force at that point in time, not thinking about the Navy, just wasn't. And just, it just continued to shape me and mold me. And just, it's ultimately led me here. I mean, I'm a very proud female veteran. Like Phoenicia, it's an interesting piece to identify as a female veteran. And I'll wrap up because I know there's others who need to share. But yes, so I'm grateful to be here and to share always.
Thank you, Alyssa. All right, Mike, it's your turn.
Hi, my name is Mike Barnett. I'm a retired Lieutenant Colonel in the Marine Corps. 9/11 to me, I was actually serving in Headquarters Marine Corps at the time, and we were given a brief. And we're up early. You have to get, if you're going to work up in DC around the Pentagon, you have to get up about 3, get on the road by 4, and so you can get there at least 6 in the morning. And they expect you to be there by till 6 at night. That's just the way it is in the service. But it was one of those days that we were given a brief and at the Pentagon, and little bit out. I mean, we didn't really know of anything. We weren't tied into any news or anything. And you could hear the plane come in. It got super loud. You can hear the engines and the impact, which you felt, which was just one of those trauma waves that goes through. And it's like, wow, what just happened? And it took a while to sink in, because at that moment you're kind of numb, because you knew something happened, but you're numb because you have to prepare yourself, being military, for any type of action, or be prepared for any type of event. And by the time we went out the door, that's when we saw the airplane had crashed into our building, the Pentagon. So it was kind of, for us, we didn't realize that it was actually a terrorist attack at that moment. We didn't really realize it was a terrorist attack about 3:30 that afternoon, because Reagan National is right next door. We thought a plane took off, banked too hard, and lost its engines, came in and crashed. Headquarters Marine Corps and a couple other things. I had friends that live in our HOA down in Stafford that were killed. They were Army auditors. There were people that I knew in that wing that we had pulled out for our meeting, which they were extremely grateful. But that day was just not a day that, I mean, I still can't wrap my mind around it a lot of times. Part of it's like, well, geez, I was just standing right there where it impacted. I don't know why I wasn't standing there at the time. So and you feel those, you know that it could have been me, or it could have been this or that. Other things could have happened. And people are running around crazy. And a couple of the younger officers were running by saying, we're under attack, we're under attack. And us kind of senior guys that were there were going, we thought it was shock, you know, because we didn't realize that we really were under attack. They said the towers were under attack. And to us, the towers were the communication towers at the Pentagon. Didn't realize New York City. That day was double the impact for me because I am a New Yorker, and New York was attacked. The Pentagon was attacked where I was at, part of the military, and then New York was attacked, so it was kind of a little bit more special day for me because, you know, I take it personal then because New York, I'm proud being a New Yorker. And I just, I mean, I argued my whole career about the New York Yankees and everybody. So, and the New York Giants. So I had to stand my ground. And when New York was attacked, I was kind of taken back from it. And in doing so, it was really a bad day. It was one of those days that you knew something was up, but you didn't really get all the information. We didn't get it first. You know, we got the information that we were under attack. We saw a video of the towers being hit, and that was the first and last time I ever watched it. I don't watch it. It's just one of those things that was just too overwhelming emotionally for me. And with my people, with people I had that were in my unit and other people that I was with that are part of our unit, we just didn't. We talk about it, but we talk about it safely amongst ourselves, if that's anything. It was 21 years ago, and last year I ended up getting a text from one of my peers. It was funny because he was reaching out. He was asking, "Yeah, do you ever think about it?" And it's like, yeah, there isn't a day it doesn't go by I don't think about it, because there's something that will trigger me about thinking about what if, could this have been done? Could that have been done? Or, you know, trying to actually logically solve the issue of being in trauma. We had been triggered recently with the withdrawal from Afghanistan. And a lot of us that were in the Pentagon now are not because it's Afghanistan. We served in Afghanistan, but there was also some of the things that dealt with being there at 9/11 in DC. They attacked our Capitol. And, you know, it's one of those things, and you get kind of emotional about it. But and I'm apolitical. I don't belong to any party. So, but I can tell you, I don't really like politicians as much as I do doctors and or dentists, for that matter. Just that they tend not to have our best interests, the military, in their sights. So so it's a little bit hard going through it a year later. We began with death at the 9/11 and we ended in death at Kabul. And I'd been in Kabul a couple of times in 2005, 2006. I'm an Afghan vet. You know, and I've been to places that I've seen bad things like Somalia and things like that. But this is one of those things where we're home, and it's like being married for 50 years and losing your partner. That partner's part of you. And how do you live without that? Or how do you live with the fact that they're not there, or that there was something big traumatically a part of your being that's there. So it's kind of hard right now. I'm not sure how I feel. I appreciate Sam asking, are we okay to do this? Because I am okay, but I'm also mad at things. So, you know, I don't drink, so that doesn't give me an excuse. I PT, but not enough to get that off my back anymore because it's still there. It'll always be there. It's just something that you gotta put up with. And a lot of and I do a lot of the being a social worker, and I work with a lot of people up in the Adirondacks, veterans, not people, but veterans. And it's just something that it gives me a lot of fulfillment. It gives me a cause, just like being in the military gave me a cause, something bigger and better than myself that I could be participating in. And that's why I think you're going to see a lot of this coming up. And it's probably the best. When I first met Alyssa, was one of the best ideas was they were putting social workers out there, which, the way they treat you when you leave the service, you get a week training and then out the door you go. So there's a lot of issues of people carrying baggage out those doors. I don't care who they are, whether they've been there overseas or not, but there's still a lot of issues. And but that 9/11 it's just I don't know how to describe it. I sit on the porch, think, knock on wood, I have the Hudson River behind me, and I sit there and just watch the water go by, pondering the questions of logic. Like, if I step in the stream right now in a running stream, is it still the same stream, or does a tree make a sound if it falls in the wood and nobody's there to hear it? So it gives you a lot of time to think like that and philosophically. But anyways, that's appreciate it, and thanks for listening.
I knew yours would be a little hard to hear there, Mike, so I had to prep my stuff. And I like how you kind of intertwined what's been going on the last year and how that's impacted you and how it ties in. All right, next we have John. And John, you know our deal.
Okay, I won't make you cry. And Michael, unless my wife is in the woods to tell me whether or not the tree made any noise, I wouldn't know. So that's just between me. Hi, my name is John Burgess. Born and raised in New York City, actually. I went to high school not too far away from the Twin Towers. I used to buy radio parts where the Twin Towers were built, back when everybody watched Flash Gordon making radios and all that sort of stuff. And I'm part of what's called the 2020 Club. I did 20 years in the New York City Police Department, and I've been out 20 years. It's actually not 21 years. It's kind of hard to think about that. I retired 10 days before September 11th. Put my papers in, walked out the door. I'd like to tell people that I retired from the police department, but it had changed, and in reality, I quit. But I had 20 years in, so I could walk out the door. On September 11th, several things happened in the morning. One was my wife told me that she called me, because people have landlines back there, and did you see what's happening? And so I went online and on the TV and was able to see that the first Twin Tower had been hit. And my first reaction was something's not right. So I got my gun and I got my shield and I got ready to go down to the city. My wife called me back and said, "Don't go." She didn't even have to ask me. She knew I was going. And I said, "Okay, I'll promise you," which I figured was a lie. I figured I was going to go anyway. I then called my mom, who lived on 23rd Street, and watched the towers burn and watched them collapse. And I remember calling her and having her cry, saying, "I can't believe what I'm looking at." And I made sure that she was safe and that I would come and get her. If I needed to, I'd be down. And again, I started to walk out the door. I mean, I was a homicide detective. Besides picking up a bucket and toting it someplace, there wasn't really anything that my skilled labor was able to do. And when I did go down there the next day, I felt embarrassed. Because again, I felt I was in the way of people that were the professionals that were there, that were called, that were still doing this as a job. And then I got a call from my hospital. I was working as a security guard. What else did retired cops do? Security guard. While I was going to nursing school. And they said, "We're going into disaster mode. We need you." So I told my wife, that's where I'll be. I won't be in the city. And so she was a little relieved. And I remember sitting in the emergency room, waiting room as people showed up, offering to give blood. And then everybody would just stand in the lobby looking at the TV until they finally just couldn't take it anymore and left. And I would tell you that since that day, for me, I look at 9/11 like Christmas. You know it's coming. You know it's going to be here. You know that there's a lot more going on, the closer and the closer and the closer that you get to it. And then all of a sudden, bang, it hits you, and that's gone. I used to drink quite heavily on September 11th. I would go in and I'd lock myself in the room and I'd watch the videotapes of 9/11 and sort of like, why didn't I know one of my partners was there? It was a guy that I worked with. He became a fireman. He was killed up there. I lost a few friends that day. I continue, as you might be able to get a chance to hear from Anthony, I continue to lose friends from 9/11 cancers. But for me, the part was that after that day, I became a nurse. I became a critical care nurse, a CCRN. I became an emergency room nurse, which is CEN. And then I got every certification from neonates all the way up to advanced burns. And I prayed every single day that I was supposed to be someplace. I didn't know where it was. And believe me, I'm not that religious. But for me to get up every single day and to pray for it. And it brought me to one of the conclusions that there are a lot of people out there that think to themselves, thank God I was not there. And I think to myself, damn it, God, I should have been there. Lost a few friends since then, so whether or not it's worked out right. And as the way of the world turns, at the age of 50, I met a recruiter for the United States Army Reserves medical unit. And I joined the Army at 50 and deployed to Iraq as a trauma burner. I worked in the Anbar province with the Marines. That's where I learned to use little words and not speak too fast. Thank you, Mike. And then I worked at Balak, which was the busiest trauma center in the world. And just between you and I, war is not healthy for children. But it was the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life. But not a day goes by, not a year goes by, not an anniversary goes by, when I think to myself, I should have been here. My team was working that day, actually. So everybody that I was working with that day was down at 9/11. So 3 of the people in my team have since died from cancer that were down there, or have other extremely debilitating diseases that nobody's ever heard of before. So whether or not that was the right answer, I trust God. He didn't put me down there that day, and instead made me a nurse and sent me to Iraq at the age of 50. So for me, it's something that changed my life. And for me, whether or not it's the people say the same thing, there is pre 9/11, post 9/11. That's the dividing line. People might say AD and BC, but for me, it's pre 9/11 and 9/11. And that day forever changed my life. So I thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening. And I hope you can get something out of this. It's an important day for a lot of people. More and more people are touched by it every day. I know it touched me. And I'll always be there. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And I just want to say, I'm very glad I know you.
I didn't make you cry, did I say?
You're trying to, and I don't like it. You know our deal. And Tony, you are next.
Are you talking about me?
I'm so sorry. Tony Rabasca.
Tony? Oh.
Yes, hi. I'm Tony Rabasca. I'm a retired Air Force officer. On 9/11, I'd been retired for 15 years. I found out about 9/11 late in the afternoon because I'd been out fly fishing on the Delaware River. One of the things that I recognized right away was the importance of the air defense system that we had in place, because the unit that was responsible for organizing the air response to 9/11 was a unit that I had been director of training at Griffiths Air Force Base. It was the NORAD Center. Finding out about the attack, I was overwhelmed with an obligation to somehow respond to it. Not only was I a retired Air Force officer, I was also at the time a marriage and family therapist and actually president of my state organization. I immediately contacted Red Cross and said, "Hey, I'm ready to go. Just tell me how to get there." This was only a day after the 9/11 had occurred. And by that time, there were literally thousands of people who had responded. It was an amazing response nationally. Subsequently, I found out that it would be a while before I could work down there. And what my wife and I decided I should do is to volunteer during the holiday season. And that's what I did. I worked down there for 2.5 weeks. And if we have time later on, I'd like to share part of the journal that I had, a segment of the journal that I'd written. Again, the most important thing to me as a veteran and also a clinician was service to country, and knowing that I could somehow contribute, or was frustrated that it would be a while before I could contribute to this horrible response. I spend a great deal of time this time of year thinking about 9/11. My birthday happens to be today, and I'm in preparation already for what I normally do on that particular day. I can say without question that the response and my reaction to it all, I was wearing a Velcro suit the entire time there. It still sticks to me. And I have vivid memories of what it was like then. And if the time permits later on, I'd like to share part of that journal. So I'll move on to let somebody else contribute at this point in time.
Thank you, Tony. And Ward.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate that. It's really humbling to hear these stories. Sobering. It brings it back. It's been a while. So I was a company commander with the 25th Infantry Division in Afghanistan in 2004, 5, and 6. But this, the story in my instance really starts with 9/11. I was living in New Haven, working at a residential treatments place for kids, for orphans, and it was about 60 miles from ground zero. And what had happened, it was just, everyone, it was incredible. I'm kind of a historian, and I saw pictures of a airplane hitting the Empire State Building in 1945 and thought maybe this is it. They're mistaken the fog. I think that was a B-25 bomber at the end of World War II, and thinking it's just something like somebody referenced earlier, just an error. With the second hit though, and then you heard about Pennsylvania and you heard about the Pentagon, it was really clear that we were at war. I had just commissioned about 9 months prior as a medical officer, and there's the only thing worse in the Army than an officer from the enlisted's perspective is a medical officer. We're pretty much the lowest of the low. We're just silly for the most part, but helpful. There's a section called bugs and hugs and drugs. We're the hugs part, So the mission was to just get up to the reserve unit called the 405th in West Hartford, and we all activated and we showed up to work. The combat support hospital was the nearest one to the city, so the mission was to then get all the pieces of the hospital down onto the site, assemble it, and start treating the wounded. But we were deactivated within about 7 hours, realizing that there was very few injuries. It was just massive fatalities. And so a bunch of us, the hugs team, I guess, just kind of took it on ourselves to head down there. Some in uniform, some without. We packed a few things. It wasn't too far. I had some tricky subway. Things were closed, and caught some rides and hitchhiked, and wound up staying down on site on and off for the next few weeks. A lot of dust. We kind of worked out of a church, if I remember right, and kind of back and forth, weird hours, kind of sleeping when you could. So lots and lots of rescue workers, lots of people that were helping them. And so our weird role was just kind of to check in, kind of bring people sandwiches, ask how it's going, and kind of process the trauma. And then not too long after, Abu Ghraib happened in Iraq, and subsequently my whole life changed in 2004 when a bunch of us across the country, social workers, were all activated to make sure that Abu Ghraib in Iraq never happened again. And so I was deployed as part of an augmented unit to the 25th Infantry, and our job was to protect detainees. So, I don't want to get too tangential, but that's the thing that kind of impacts me when I think about 9/11. Firstly, that, I was a year in Afghanistan and, missing family and got hit by a rocket and all kinds of exciting things happen. But the other thing that maybe is closer to everyone who's listening is the macro side of it. That 9/11 arguably was a generational event, kind of like people before us might have asked, where were you when John F. Kennedy was shot? Everyone can tell you, where were you when you heard about 9/11? And I remember thinking at the time immediately that this is really a significant event, that America's relationship with the rest of the world is going to change. It's going to pivot. I don't know how. I think George Bush, for what it's worth, kind of led us, gave us the direction that people were looking for and expressed that anger. And someone said earlier how we were all together for a little bit. Everyone was just kind of on the same team. And in a time of divisiveness and confusion, uncertainty and frustration politically and so forth, it was a very different moment. I hope there's never such a transformative event again in our lifetime or our children's lifetimes, but I suspect there will be. And I think a lot about the big picture, how 9/11 put the world in a really different place, and it continues to. So I guess when the day comes around every year, I think less about what I went through and the people I knew that were impacted, and more about how it was kind of the opening of another chapter, and we're still living that chapter. And it's I think it's going to be with us our entire lives. It's going to be that significant a moment. The Queen died today after 70 years as the reigning monarch. I think one of the longest living monarchs in world history, and it's a really significant event to England and to the Commonwealth countries. Nothing really even comes close from our country's perspective to 9/11. I mean, Pearl Harbor is the obvious one, and maybe the Alamo and so on, but it's really our moment. And what we've done with it, and talking about it from a trauma perspective, we're left with so many powerful, significant, fundamental changes in who we are as a nation and who we are as people. And I think that's really where my head is. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Ward. And I know, Ward, one of the things that always stands out with me is how many deployments did you do?
I just had one. Some of these other people, 3, 4. It's just incredible how many people have been back and forth since 9/11.
Yeah, it is so incredible. And so I don't know if you all saw in the chat, John Borsch had to leave us early. So we're going to do a last minute sub. And Anthony Kavoris, who is connected with one of our Dwyer programs in New York State, is going to share with us. He's going to introduce himself and share with us his 9/11 story.
Hello. So I'm Anthony Kavoris. Right now, I'm the director of the veterans programs for MHA Dutchess. And Vet to Vet is one of our programs that I'm in charge of. But I'm also I did 34 plus years as security forces member in the Air Force. And I was in for a while before 9/11 and stayed in for a while after 9/11. So I remember that day because I was driving home after a late shift and I hear on the radio something about a prop plane hitting one of the towers. And so I was trying to find it. I couldn't find it anymore on the radio. And I got home and I turned the TV on just in time to see the second plane go through the towers. So I immediately called. I knew exactly what I said, we're under attack. And I called up my base. I said, are we on alert? And they go, yeah, get about 5 hours of sleep and come in. We're going in. So I get there, we go, we take a bus and a couple of trucks and we head down. So we got there, you know, it wasn't even 24 hours and we were already there. Then we find out that one of our guys, Jerome, actually responded to the towers. He was also a emergency services cop, and they were training nearby. So when it happened, he rushed in, him and his partner. Well, his partner was able to crawl out after about 12 hours, but we never found Jerome. We were looking, but he disintegrated. And so we were there, and it was crazy. They told us, listen, look everywhere because there's still explosions going on. There's stuff falling. So we're getting ready to go into the bucket brigade, and we're standing by the Millennium Hotel. And me and this other guy right next to me, and a big sheet of glass falls right in between us, like huge, like a man-sized sheet of glass, and missed both of us by like inches. So we just like all looked at each other, and everybody put their helmet on after that. It was looking everywhere, but it was insane. And I just remember being so busy because we were there for, I don't know, about a week or so, and we were on the bucket brigade. We were finding body parts and stuff, and we were quite busy, and we couldn't feel all the emotion of it yet. We were staying in like schools and courtrooms and stuff like that. That's what we were sleeping in. But when I got home, I see my wife, and she's looking at me, and I immediately broke up, and that's when it all hits you and stuff. Everything that you saw, you know. And I remember the first attack on the towers, my cousin actually worked in there both times. And so he got out and was all covered with soot the first time. The second time, they all went downstairs, his whole office, and they were told it was okay, safe to go back up. And they said no. They had this plan that Giuliani had drawn up, and they followed it, and they got out of the danger zone in time, you know. So that was a relief. I mean, I had family that worked there. My niece called up and said, I'm okay. I had an appointment this morning, a breakfast appointment, and I wasn't right at the towers when it happened. So, but next thing I know, you know, everything's changed in our career field. And, you know, I went down there with 15 other guys, and about 9 of us have gotten cancer. I know one guy got it like 6 times. So we still continue to suffer from what we did. And I don't know, I retired in 2014, 2013, I was in Afghanistan. And I lost one of my troops in Afghanistan. The following year, we lost a few more. I mean, I carry their names on my wrist every day, but it was a little traumatic when we pulled out, because all this pain and suffering, and then we just pulled out and left everything over there. It was like I was getting a lot of calls from a lot of people, some of my old troops, and also a lot of Vietnam vets were actually calling me and saying they needed to talk because it was disturbing them. So like the man said, it was post 9/11, right? You know, it was before 9/11, after 9/11, and pretty much the world changed. But one thing that was good, we were leaving 9/11 on this bus, and all these people had signs up saying, "Thank you, we love you, thank you for your service." And I had been in for a while. I joined in 1980. And the first time I ever heard "thank you for your service" was when we were leaving Ground Zero, 9/11. That was the first time, and people still say it. So something came out of it, you know. And I wish that people would still remember that and continue it. I do think the military is changing now, and maybe we're not as prepared. We kind of forgot what happened, and we're kind of slipping back into, hey, nothing's going on, everything's okay. And it scares me for the young people just going in now. But you know, I just thought I'd share it because I had, you know, there was a lot going on with 9/11, and it still goes on, like I said, and everything that happened after that. And I think all these guys that I lost, they really died because of 9/11. If 9/11 hadn't happened, we wouldn't have been in Iraq or Afghanistan, right? So it's all related. And that's it. I just thought I'd share. So thank you.
Thank you so much. That was very powerful. Several points that all of you made was very powerful, as these panels always are. And I am going to combine a couple of our other questions. So we'll just go through one more time, just so everyone knows what to expect. And then, of course, we'll end the evening. We voluntold Brent that he will sing us out tonight, because it's always very powerful when he does that. So Brent, I'm just putting you on warning that we're done with this round. Be prepared. Okay, so I'm going to combine a couple of the questions we've come up with. Venicia, we'll be starting with you. So why is it important to talk about the experiences of 9/11, and how has military culture helped you in your healing and growth after 9/11?
So firstly, it's important to share because everybody's experience was different and it impacted everybody differently. We've had, I don't know, everyone speak, and it's been, everybody's stories have been different. And it's important for us to share this information because it's a part of helping each other heal, and supporting each other. Just knowing that we have a supportive network of individuals that we can rely on. In regards to the military, how it shaped my military culture, well, if 9/11 didn't happen, I wouldn't have joined the military. And the military culture that I experience is just something that's embedded in me. And being able to work with veterans, being able to sit on this panel, and being able to give back has really empowered me, not just as a woman veteran, because I always advocate for women veteran, but as a veteran, and advocating for other veterans who don't know, not to, so that other veterans know that they're not the only ones that are experiencing, whether it be transitions or whatever challenges they may be experiencing, that they're not alone, and there are others that are able to identify with them and support them, peer support. There are clinicians that are able to understand the military culture, and through this, we're able to share that and educate others so that the veterans are able to provide, to get the services that they need and connect with others.
And I know you've just continued to serve. You left service officially and you just continue to serve in
Yes,
different
that's why I'm here.
capacities.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Yes.
Thank you so much, Venicia.
You're
So
welcome.
Brent, why is it important to talk about the experiences of 9/11, and how has military culture supported you in your healing and growth? I'm not even going to say just after 9/11, but like just since you left the military, because you were in the military way before 9/11. So how has the culture helped you?
So my military experience became a part of me, and I didn't even know it. And so the military culture has helped me in so many different ways. And just the fact to kind of put both of those questions together, it's important. It was important for me to talk about what happened. And I have these comrades, these people who I work with, these people who I'm friends with outside of work, who are veterans, who I bond with, and when I joined the military, I was looking for that camaraderie. I was looking for that brotherhood. I was looking for that connection. I didn't even know it. And then when I got it, it touched me so deeply that it's been something that that I've been looking for ever since. And I didn't even know it once I left the military. But then one day I figured it out. And so to be able to hear other stories like tonight helps me to get a different perspective. it helps me to know that I'm not alone. It also humbles me when I listen to the different stories that were told tonight, and how it affected others, and how others have dealt with it, and are still dealing with it. And so sharing gives me a feeling of not being alone, and it allows me to express these feelings. And then, it's even better when I get feedback, and so it's helped me a lot.
And just like Venetia, I know you continue to serve as well. And everything you do is giving back. And now, Alyssa, I see you're inside now.
Yes.
So why is it important to talk about the experiences of 9/11, and how has military culture supported you in your healing and growth?
I mean, just like others have said, I think it was, Mike who said it's something greater than ourselves. It's a connection. It's a camaraderie. Brent said it, Venetia said it, it's, I think it's important to share, because shared experience is what keeps it going. It's what keeps it alive. It's why we talk. It's why we write. It's why we do all the things we do. There's so much power in the telling of a story and passing down the experiences. And none of us have the same experience, and nor should we. Even if we were all there at the same time, our experiences would still have been different. And I think it's important to just know that. From a military culture perspective, it's asking, tell me about your service. Talk to me about what that means for you, about what you've done and seen and what that means for you. And I mean, it's just so powerful to not think that, they went through this, and so that must mean this. And it's not that. I think for me, starting my professional career as a social worker, literally as this event happened, shaped so much of my career, of my decisions, of my service, of all of it. And just, it's just important to keep going and keep talking, because for so many generations you didn't, and that thankfully is changed and changing, and stories need to be told, because that's how we heal. And that's just real.
Thank you, Alyssa. And Mike. So Mike, why is it important to talk about the experiences of 9/11, and how has your military culture supported you in your healing and your growth?
That's a pretty good series of questions. Let me address this to social workers, because this is one of the things I think I have an advantage on. That what's important about talking about it is, for instance, it's very close to exposure therapy. And as you keep exposing it, you're finding that that tenderness around the edges and finally into the core, it starts to heal. It's like a stab wound. A stab wound heals from the inside out. It's not like a cut across the back where you stitch it up. And that's one of the things that when you're wounded through trauma like that the healing starts from the inner and out. That's why a stab wound's never covered or sewn up, because you have to let that work its way back to the surface and get the infection out. One of the things talking about it, because it's weird sharing it with other people. Now, veterans, I have no problem with it, because we're part of the culture. One of the things that you're going to notice if you're ever working with veterans, I cannot see one of my buddies for 15 years, and that day that we left is the same day I picked up the next day in our conversation. That's just the culture itself. And it's funny, because it's not like, oh yeah, 20 years have gone by and guess what? This has happened, blah, blah, blah. You pick up the next day, and that's the way your deployments were. And that's one of the things with marriages and everything. The day you leave, your wife and family are moving on. They're paying bills, they're taking care of everything at the home front. And you're over there every day trying to PT, eat, do something, watch, be safe, situational awareness. You come back the day that you left. And that's something to be aware of. So what we have to do in talking about this is that to move on. If you're not moving on, then you're not getting healthy. You're not curing it, and you're not helping it. And these are just some of my beliefs working with veterans and doing, especially with the Vietnam veterans and some of the things I'm doing up here. It's just that that culture on the trench level, not the services themselves. The services themselves, it could be different, but the trenches, everybody that's in the trenches, you're going to look out for that other person left and right of you. And that's just the way it is. That's how you survive. And it builds the perseverance in an individual. And that's what you want to do. And if you've never worked in military, just my thing is when you talk about this stuff, because a year later, every time this comes around, I'm not sleeping well. I mean, I'm up front with you. And it's not from coffee. I'm not going out and getting drunk. It's just things bother me. It's like, and I keep referring to it as I'm in Afghan time. And because of the way the trauma affected me around this time frame. And if you're dealing with the veterans, make sure you over this, especially what's come up with Afghanistan, as you talk about it, it's you have to earn their trust, and they're not trusting people. It's just that way. And what I've learned through talking about 9/11 is really I'm trusting. So nobody wants to get hurt, again, and they don't want it, and they don't like feeling hurt, especially when you're healing. And it's just one of those things. So that's what I got to say. Thanks, Sam.
I love an analogy, and I think you just did such an amazing job with the stab analogy and like explaining that as trauma and how it heals and what has to happen. I just think you did such a good job with that. At least if no one else got anything, I certainly got a lot out of it. I think you did a really good job with that analogy. And I just thank you for using that. And now I'm going to ask Tony Rabaska to go. And Tony, I think it's the perfect time, once you answer the questions, to read what you want to share with everyone. I think that'd be very powerful. So a reminder of your questions. Why is it important to talk about the experiences of 9/11, and how has military culture supported your healing and growth?
Thank you. Yeah, the experience of working down at 9/11 was, to start with, an assault on the senses. Am I on? Oh, you can hear me, okay. My first view of ground zero was the enormous scale of the devastation. The second was a distinct odor, the likes of which I'd never experienced and hope never to experience again. The third was the cacophony of noise generated by enormous diesel trucks, et cetera, so on and so forth. And the reverberations of the noise coming out of the holes where the towers once stood. It was the second night I was there, and we were on a supply run to Trinity Church, which in itself was a miracle that it had survived the devastation of the towers coming down. My coworker and I were leaving Trinity Church, which was outside the perimeter, which was fenced off. It had been fenced off so that people couldn't get close to the pit, to the pits. We heard a voice, Red Cross, Red Cross, they yelled out to us. Please, please. My coworker and I approached the young woman, who was accompanied by an older woman, whom we learned was the young woman's mother-in-law, who had just arrived from London, England. They asked to be escorted across the site to post a photograph of a young man named Jeremy. The young woman was his wife, the older woman was his mother. We could not escort them, but offered to post the photo on the huge makeshift memorial that had been erected on the opposite side of the site. As the moment unfolded, the older woman handed us a note. It was a goodbye she never imagined she would have to experience, at least not losing him, her son, before she died. We stood there in the cold as the young woman tearfully handed me her husband's picture. I asked her to give me her name and phone number so I could call to confirm we had fulfilled her wish. My coworker and I were overwhelmed as we made our way to the memorial. In the space of a few minutes, we witnessed / experienced the sanctuary of Trinity Church, the unbridled grief of two women, all taking place on the edges of death's door. We reached the memorial. When we reached the memorial, we were overwhelmed by the hundreds of notes and photographs of the dead and missing. As we left, the wind picked up and the dust began to swirl and the awful odor seemed to intensify. I think about this every 9/11. And there's a wonderful prayer that I received the day that I elected. If I may, I'd like to read it in its entirety. I think it really, really hits home. I have no idea who wrote it. It's anonymous. It was written on November the 21st, 2001 at Ground Zero. No one could be glad to be here in such a place. Yet I ask myself, what can I be thankful for today? It is this, that I have learned there is truly such a thing as a sacred ground, and I am privileged to be allowed to walk here. That here we stand as equals, all alike, all different, all mourning, rejoicing, all caring and healing. That I have met people with hearts so gold and bright, they put the sun to shame. That the precious metal of those hearts has been forged into a gate that opens onto a garden of souls, a place where they live forever, never lost and never forgotten. That I have met true heroes, the bravest and the finest, and I believe by all that it is good and holy, that they have earned a place in heaven for each of the souls that sleep in the arms of the towers. That I have met so many individuals of such rare and selfless spirit who have taught me that strength and power are not the state of kings, but of extraordinary everyday people. That I have learned to hope again, for hope is a state of grace that God bestows as seeds in a garden, even when we believe there is nothing left to hope for. That in the garden of the heart still lays the path of heaven's gate. And one of the things that when I read this reminds me of is the connections I had in the military for so many, many years, and so many people that I have remained in contact with. To me, this is what it was all about. And frankly, I don't think we spend enough time reminding ourselves of this extraordinary event that has affected all of our lives and will continue for years to come.
Tony, thank you so much for sharing that. We really, really appreciate it. And Ward, your questions. Why is it important to talk about the experiences of 9/11 and how has military culture supported your healing and growth?
Thank you, Sam. So, it's nice people are listening and people in practice, and they're often working with veterans, people that have kind of been there in a different way or whatever. We talk a lot about the unique veteran experience, and I don't want to minimize it at all because it certainly is a real thing. But sometimes from a maybe civilian perspective, it's just something that happened. It kind of doesn't always have to define you utterly. In the Wounded Warrior Recovery Program, they talk a lot about post-traumatic stress as awful, but recoverable, and that we have to find ways to move forward. So I love that this dialogue is occurring and that people might feel a little more comfortable working with veterans or asking those difficult questions. It's just nice to be heard. I'll never forget coming back from Afghanistan. For some reason, we flew into Bangor, Maine, hopping on these smaller flights. And somebody had said that there was a bunch of civilians that sometimes met people there. And I was like, oh, wow, that's really cool. I was just really wanted to get home and kind of out process. And I hadn't really seen how America had responded post 9/11 so much, and so many soldiers, and so much happening overseas. And we came around a corner and there's nobody there. And I was like, well, it is what it is. And then we came around another corner and there was about 80 fellow veterans and VFW members and family members. And there was just this profound line of handshakes and people handing us phones to call our loved ones because we just came into the States. And there was places you could get little snacks, and it just felt so extraordinarily cared for. And this was a little tiny airport in Maine. And I'm sure people know that 9/11, all the flights for the next 5 days were completely shut down across all of North America. And something like a third of them wound up in Gander, Canada, a tiny little town the size of the little one I live in, which just happens to have this little airport and huge 777s. I think something like 40 of them just landed. And this little town just, came out and took care of all these people that couldn't fly. And I guess, if you leave it with any thought, it's wonderful to be part of something so magnificent as our country with all its faults and problems. It's just full of really good people who really believe in, to some degree, that we're doing the right thing to try to make a world a better place. And 9/11 was the wake-up call that led to that. I really didn't answer the question, did I? Sorry, Sam.
No, Ward, no, you get to answer whatever question you want. And I think that was really powerful. The whole story, the airport, I loved it. So I think you did great. And I also want to invite Anthony Kavoris to answer these questions as well. Anthony, if you would like to.
Sure. What was the first question again?
Okay, good. Because I like to repeat it every time. I didn't want to be annoyed. Why is it important to talk about the experiences of 9/11 and how has your military culture helped you in your healing and growth?
So I always say that it's important to talk about it so that we don't forget, and so that the generation behind us doesn't forget, because it's the bane of mankind that we forget, right? So we need to remind people why we went to Afghanistan, why we went to Iraq, why people died. People died for this. And why? Because we were attacked on our own soil and thousands of people got killed, including people that I know. And if we don't talk about it, we'll forget the actual importance of our response to it. And that's a big thing for me. People forget a lot of stuff. I've been deployed, other people have been deployed, and the people that deploy remember the little, I remember everybody that got hurt. I remember everybody, all my friends, every little thing that they did. I remember every little aspect of a deployment, because, adrenaline is running so high during those things. And when we responded to ground zero, it was really like being deployed. It was, our adrenaline was through the roof. So, once adrenaline gets to that high of a level and for that long of a period of time, you're just never going to forget it. It's part of you. How has my military culture? That's a little tougher, because military culture kind of has been changing a little bit. But before 9/11, we were all brothers and sisters, but we hadn't had any big, war event. We hadn't gone to war in a while. So when we went to ground zero and saw body parts and destruction, and when we're in the bucket brigade, there was destruction in a 360-degree area. You couldn't turn anywhere where it wasn't completely destroyed. So it changed everything, right? Now, all of a sudden, the stuff that the Vietnam guys were saying, the World War II guys were saying, the Korean guys were saying, now it kind of made sense, you know? And then, of course, we started deploying everywhere. And even the guys that, you know, everybody's your brother when you deploy. Everybody's your sister when you deploy, right? It's like the guy said, that who's in front of you, who's behind you, who's in the side of you, left and right. And you're really there for them to protect each other. And that never goes away. And military culture, everybody who's served, regardless of the era that you served in or the length of time or how many deployments you go, or you never deployed, you still have some kind of commonality. You know, everybody has something that they can relate to, and it really is a brotherhood, right? Like the man said, I went to the fair a couple of weeks ago, and I saw one of my troops, he was my 2IC actually, and I hadn't seen him in a while. And hey, how you doing, Anthony? Hey, how you doing, Mike? You know, and hug each other, and immediately start talking like it was just a few weeks ago, you know, that we hadn't seen each other. And this happens all the time. That's military culture. We never forget our service. We never forget others who served. And that's kind of why a lot of us go into this business, where we now help other veterans and other people who may not be doing as good as we are, but we want them to. And so we give of ourselves. And I think every veteran, almost to the letter, after they get out, they still somehow serve in some capacity, you know, whether it's just helping family, whether it's helping, you know, another veteran, where they always seem to want to help because they want to serve and they want to be part of a team. That's military culture, and that's how it kind of all ties in, you know. 9/11 brought everybody together. We kind of, you know, sometimes people start forgetting, but in the military aspect of it, we're still together. So that's it.
Thank you so much. And I just want to thank the entire panel. I am truly honored that you all allow me to work with you and that you allow me to support the work that you do. I adore all of you, and I think you know that. And I just want to also shout out Dr. Amanda Madison, who's on our committee as well, who's here tonight to support. I can't tell you what it means to me that you allow me to hear your stories and you allow me to be part of your journey. And I'm so happy that I get to continue doing this with you and that we get to continue to train people. And now everyone is in for a big treat because Brent is going to close us out with song.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, all the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in the air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave, the brave, the brave. Thank you.
I speak for everyone. Thank you, Brent, and thank you all for joining us tonight.